Good evening, and thank you for joining us tonight for Eye on Innovation, the series. This is our final event of the year. I am Laurie Dotter, incoming board chair of the Retina Foundation. We are here tonight to celebrate innovation, philanthropy, legacy, and the future. First, I want to share some facts that may be surprising to you about the innovative research underway at the Retina Foundation. On a daily basis, the men and women in our labs and clinics are accelerating new programs in stem cell research, genetic editing, and cutting-edge clinical trials, all for one purpose: to bring us solutions for degenerative retinal diseases. These innovative programs are led by doctors and scientists who are world-renowned in their field, but they conduct their work right here in Dallas. Why Dallas? You and I have shown them that we care. That's our topic for tonight, philanthropy. The Retina Foundation's work in inherited retinal diseases, age-related macular degeneration, or AMD, as we commonly call it, and pediatric eye disorders, it's made possible by the generosity of donors like T. Boone Pickens. 15 years ago, Mr. Pickens understood the need for a world-class AMD specialist here in Dallas. He invested in the future of the Retina Foundation by endowing a chair for the recruitment and hiring of Dr. Karl Csaky. Dr. Csaky is the inaugural T. Boone Pickens Chair. Also, because of his commitment to our organization, he serves as our CEO and Chief Medical Officer. So much has happened since Boone made that investment those many years ago. There has been tangible, long-lasting impact from his visionary actions and impactful gifts. That is the definition of legacy. Genetic markers have been discovered, more accurate, comprehensive, and earlier diagnostic tools have been developed, and the clinical trials just continue to expand. Like the AMD sibling study we spoke about at our Eye on Innovation event in September. Also, at that gathering, we asked for contributions to meet the goal of the $250,000 matching gift challenge, which was made by Buena Vista Foundation and the Tapestry Foundation in Austin. That challenge was inspired when sisters Jeannie Klein and Diane Bodie shared their family's story and described the Foundation's AMD sibling study at our annual luncheon. In just a few months, this community rose to the challenge, and collectively, more than $500,000 has been raised for this very unique stem cell study. You should clap for yourselves. We shared that wonderful news at our first Eye on Innovation event in Austin. My father and my family were there too, to participate and celebrate. You see, we are also impacted by retinal eye disease. I have watched my father lose his vision, but even worse, lose his ability to do so many things that he loved when he could see. But we have found hope, backed by science at the Retina Foundation, and I am confident this important research will save vision for our families and for future generations. As we strive to reach a common goal to save vision, our mission becomes a movement. I am grateful for the leaders like T. Boone Pickens, who set a foundation, a solid foundation, before us. On behalf of all families with a loved one losing their vision, thank you for your support. And now I will turn it over to esteemed journalist Cheryl Hall, who will lead our panel discussion tonight with Jay Rosser and Dr. Karl Csaky about the legacy of T. Boone Pickens and his powerful impact on North Texas, and how that impact will only continue to expand into the future, touching so many lives. Please join me in welcoming Cheryl Hall, Jay Rosser, and Dr. Karl Csaky.
Good evening. I take great pleasure in being here because as a long time journalist, my eyes are incredibly important to me, and it's fun because I'm looking out and I'm seeing all of these people that I've known for years, and it's good to see you and be seen. So I'd like to start out by asking Jay, and my daughter says that I can't use the term hookup, but how do you and Boone come to be? I mean, what?
Well, good news is we never hooked up, but so let me take you back to the late 1980s. I actually worked for Bill Clements. We all remember Governor Bill Clements, who was part of SMU getting the death penalty. But isn't it great to see where SMU is today? That program is it's great. So I'm in one of my jobs. This is how old school journalism was at the time. I was a deputy press secretary. I would have to go down to the basement of the Capitol every day. I would clip every newspaper to put together a clip packet so the governor would know what was taking place in all the communities across Texas. And I was clipping the Amarillo Globe News, and there was a front page picture and a big headline. And the picture was of a sign that said, "Goodbye, Jerry," hanging off the tallest building at the time in Amarillo, which was Mesa Petroleum. And it was a sign that Boone put up, "Goodbye, Jerry." Jerry was the editor of the Amarillo Globe newspaper. And Boone basically drove the editor out of town. He was kind of the Donald Trump of his time as it related to the media. And I thought, who is this crazy old guy? Why would you do that? You never argue, you know the old saying, you never argue with somebody who buys ink by the barrel. Then a year later, I'm working for the guy. So that's how I came to hook up with him.
What about you, Dr. Csaky? Did you ever?
I know. It was interesting. I had a connection to North Texas. My parents had retired in Fort Worth. My sister and brother-in-law were in Fort Worth. And so I was coming to Dallas, Fort Worth on a frequent basis. And then essentially I got a call from several folks at the Retina Foundation saying, Mr. Pickens Boone wants to find the best AMD person that's out there and wants to bring them to Dallas, and what is it going to take? And essentially, through their search process, they had come to me as the final candidate, and so at first it was kind of a wonderful honor, but even before I moved here, I went to meet him, right? And I think that's to me what I loved about Boone in many ways was he was my first introduction to this Texas way of life, right? And Jay knows, you walk into his office up on Preston, and there's this big board with all of the equities and shares and stuff, and it looks very imposing. And here I was, still relatively not knowing what to say and everything, and we're all waiting, and all of a sudden he comes walking in. He's got his OSU orange vest on. He's got his boots up, sits up on the table, puts his boots on the table, and he goes, "Okay, Karl, tell me about yourself." And that was such an amazing experience, and he just made me feel right at ease from the very beginning. So it was really a remarkable introduction to this incredible person who was just so unassuming and so welcoming.
Can I give you some color to that? Because I sat in all those meetings and I knew how it was going to go. Because if you picture, he had a long conference room and he had a big board up there. It's about the size of that screen. And his whole stock portfolio up there is commodities and equities. And red was a bad day. Blue was a great day. So if you were there on a blue day, you had a chance. If you were there on a red day, it was like, good luck.
Well, so you called me. Yeah, time flies when we're having fun. You called me yesterday from Stillwater. What the heck were you doing in Stillwater?
Well, that's a great question. A lot of Boone's giving was at Oklahoma State up there. We announced yesterday a $25 million gift to what's going to be called the Boone Pickens Human Performance and Nutrition Research Institute.
And he was such a healthy eater.
Look, he believed in health and fitness for sure. They were happy up at OSU. You know the old saying, where there's a well, get in it. And they got in it a long time ago.
So, but what about putting his name on the building? It's going to have his name on the building?
It'll have his name on it. You know, there's the age-old question. You know, a lot of people will say, you know, do you give anonymously? Do you give and want naming rights? You know, I think Boone begrudgingly, you know, early on, didn't really want to put his name on buildings. He came really to believe, largely fueled by some of the philanthropic recipients, that his gift was the good housekeeping seal of approval. You know, there's a number of, you know, charities out here who've been part of that. Center for Brain Health is a great example. He gave them, you know, I think over the course of time, $11 million, which they've now turned, you know, to $150 million. Sandy and Debbie are here. They can correct me if I'm wrong. But, you know, his giving spurred other giving, which was great. You know, he had a gift to UT Southwestern, which was $50 million. He had a great match on it. He said, I'm going to give you $50 million, but over the next 25 years, you have to turn it into $500 million. And if you don't, all the rest of the money goes back to Oklahoma State. So they fulfilled it. They've got the $500 million.
They had motivation.
They got motivation.
So has there ever been kind of a funky time about the naming? Sometimes I know too much.
Yeah, well, kudos to Cheryl. Cheryl has known Boone much longer than I did, so you're the perfect person to do this. You know, let's be clear. You know, Boone had several wives, and you know there'd be times where you know the wife would want their name on the building too, and we have to come in and say no, because you may have another wife next time, but I'm not coming to back cleanup.
So we're celebrating your 15th year of being here. What was your motivation in accepting Boone's offer? And where are you in the continuum of that? What progress have you made? More importantly, where are we headed?
Right. You know, I think, first of all, you know, as you know, I'm that named chair, and I think, you know, every email I send out, every time I give a talk anywhere, I always put obviously his name, and so there's this kind of intimacy that I feel with him and his ability to be successful. And so that's a drive that I have taken from him. You know, one of the great things about the Retina Foundation is that we have this amazing efficiency. We have ability to have, you know, come up with some great ideas and then execute very quickly. And so over the last 15, if I look at what I'm able to do now for patients, when I see patients with various forms, and there's a whole variety of various forms of macular degeneration, and when I look at what I'm able to do now with many times the tools that we developed here, in all the various aspects, you know, it's amazing. I look back, I took care of Boone for many years as well, and even the way I was able to take care of him and the way I'm able to take care of patients today has already dramatically changed in just this, you know, very short, relatively short 15 years. And so when I look at where the enormous future potential is, you know, you heard about these stem cell studies that we're doing. You know, the ability for us to take any one of your all's blood, turn them into stem cells, turn them into eye cells, and then start to understand exactly why somebody with macular degeneration, what are the mechanisms behind that disease, and study that in a dish is an amazing point of time in history. And I think there's no doubt that we're going to start to dissect major pathways, just like we've done with, you know, heart disease and cholesterol. We're going to have the same opportunity. So we are really on the precipice of enormous advancements, many of which we've already accomplished, but already the future is just unbelievable. And part of the reason it's going to happen here, and I'm convinced of that because I travel around the world, and every place I go, there's all these, you know, outside pressures that prevent people from achieving that potential. And here we don't have that. We have this enormous supportive folks around us like you all that believe in us. And so I'm convinced that the next 15 years are going to be even that much more successful.
But unfortunately, you're in a growth industry where we're aging and eyesight deal.
I'm not aging.
No,
Okay, maybe so.
you'll always be younger than me, so that's all that counts. What do you see as, what really do you want to achieve in you have some staggering statistics about how many people will have age-related degenerative, you want to share those?
Yeah, so I mean, when we look across, these, one of the great things about medicine is it's allowing us to live longer. I tell people all the time that when I was in residency, if somebody came into my office and they were 80, that was a big deal. Now, 100 is already kind of no big deal. So we're really allowing ourselves to live longer. So we really need to make sure that we have not just living longer, but we have a wonderful longer life to live. And vision is such a critical portion. So when you look at these numbers, the reason we call it age-related macular degeneration is because age is the number one risk factor. If you look across the board, by the time you get to 70, 1 of every 3 people will have some signs of the disease. When you get into your 80s, it goes up even higher. So the numbers are really staggering. They're in the millions, which really means that not only do we have to do this for the folks in North Texas and Dallas, the people that I see, but really across the world, because this is a wave of vision loss that's going to affect all of these people, the people that are getting older and want to have this wonderful older life, and we have an obligation to provide that for them. So that's what I'm excited about.
So Jay, why have, Boone had many, many interests. Why have you picked up the retina issue? I mean, what does it mean to you?
Because along the way, and it holds true, there's a number of his philanthropic recipients here tonight, and they're all great causes. Baylor Scott and White Center for Brain Health, TWU School of Nursing, Scottish Rite. I mean, there's just so many, and they're great causes. Who cannot be for some of those causes? Boone had, macular degeneration. But Boone, more than sometimes investing in institutions, he invested in leaders. And he saw leaders, and he saw you, Dr. Csaky, as a leader.
Succession of leadership.
Yes.
So tell about the succession of leadership part. If Boone were here today?
So if Boone were here today, he would say a couple of things. One, what the hell is going on with politics today? That'd be number one thing that he would say. And that's a fair question. 2, he would look at Dr. Csaky and say, hey, what's your succession plan, right? It's incumbent upon you as a leader to have a great succession plan. And then he would probably say to all of y'all, do what he did, which was be charitable while you're alive, see the good that's being done with your money today, not, give and after you're gone, kind of scratch your head, whatever happened to it.
Yeah, can I share our story about dining in the dark?
Sure.
The date will go down in my mind forever, but the Dining in the Dark people wanted me to do an advance on the event at the Fairmont where they darken everything. And the only thing that we're allowed to be seen are the exit signs, and it's pitch dark. So I said, I'm not much on doing advances, but how about if Kern Wildenthal, Ebby Halliday, and Boone dine with me in a closet.
In the dark.
In the dark. And we did. And Kern got into the spirit afterwards, but at first, and Boone had just fallen at the ranch and had hurt his wrist, and he bit his hand, and he did say an expletive. And then Jay came and got him out of the closet. He came back in and he goes, Lehman Brothers just went in, let's finish breakfast.
I figured that was a call Boone probably wanted to take, so yeah.
But he was, and that leads into, there are some craziness things going on in Washington and some truly craziness things. Does that have you worried at all?
I think one of the, again, things, I guess in some ways, and it's funny, when you reflect back on the influence people have on you, in many ways it's subliminal, right? It's not necessarily how they talk to you, but how they act and how you see them acting. And I think one thing that, I learned from all the times I met with Boone is he always, had these diverse investments. He was always talking about multiple ways to do things. And so in many ways, we've done that at the foundation. We have multiple sources of support. And in many ways, we've insulated ourselves from, a governmental kind of, how should I say?
Pressure.
Pressure and trough. I mean, many people look at government dollars as an important, and a necessary source of revenue. And it is part of our revenue stream for sure, but we've never I made sure that it was never a total requirement. So we're somewhat insulated from both geographically, but also just how we do business from some of the craziness that may or may not be going on in Washington, D.C. So that's one of the other reasons we can afford to be insulated, because again, of our size and our efficiencies.
And also, you're one of those niches that nobody else is doing this, right? I mean,
correct.
You're very focused on one thing, and you don't go into tangents, and you kind of stay the course. So I got to get back to you coming out of Stillwater. Where, they're talking about Boone being, all for health. Well, he had some not so healthy eating habits. So what was the number one app that you had on your phone?
Most valuable app, clearly, everywhere we went, doesn't matter, large town, small town, before we leave, he wanted to go to Dairy Queen.
For what?
For a blizzard, an Oreo blizzard. So I had the app on my phone, most valuable app I ever could have had.
And his other little thing, if you wanted to bribe him, are those Swedish fishes?
Oh yeah, he loved the Swedish fish, absolutely.
So, yeah, going back to you and what really floats your boat these days? I mean, just what if you could do one thing, what would it be?
I think
of all the, just
one thing. I do enjoy this. I'm a very big believer in that innovation, and it started, way back. It actually started with the Caruth Foundation. They gave us a grant to work with SMU, and I've always been intrigued about where does innovation start. And so one of the things that I really am a big believer in is bringing people together in this kind of unfettered environment where you can just really great, big thoughts and really kind of banter around ideas. And that's one of the nice things, Boone's support, other people's support allow us to do that. Really kind of become really creative in our thinking. The sibling study, no one else in the world is doing that, right? And you could ask, well, how is that? And
Tell a little more about this.
Yeah, so this idea that, as I told you, you can take stem cells and study them. And it was really, we brought in Dr. Sripathi from Hopkins. He's now on our faculty. And he's one of the world's experts on growing these stem cells, right? But he had not had exposure to the clinic very well. A typical university, the lab is over here, the clinics are across campus. And so as he was here and other people in the labs we were all talking about various things, it became clear that wouldn't it be interesting, and we started, as we see patients, sometimes, obviously, if we see a patient with macular degeneration, their siblings will be in the room with us and say, well, can you examine me? Okay, we'll examine you, because we tell them there is a genetic component to this. And so what we found was that we had this, several siblings, as well as twins, in which one person had relatively significant macular degeneration, and the sibling, relatively similar in age, had nothing. And so that's an intriguing clinical finding that prompted us to kind of banter around ideas. And that's when we came up with this idea that we can now, take stem cells and start to dissect them, knowing that one sibling who's very close genetically, and in fact, if they're a twin identical, has macular degeneration, the other one doesn't. Can we dissect out something from that process? And it's by far, I think, one of the most exciting areas of science that no one else is doing, and we can do that here. So those kind of big ideas, big things are what really floats my boat.
So if you were to get hit by a Mack truck tomorrow,
What is your succession
What
plan?
is my succession
what is your
plan?
succession?
Well, one of the things, as I said, one of the things that I'm very big on is the group effect, right? And so I never I'm a big believer in never allowing one person to be kind of the owner of everything, right? And so everything that we do is a group effort, is a collaborative effort. Even on the administrative side, I have wonderful kind of senior administrators. And so one of the things that I'm very, keen on is ensuring that nothing just stays with me, that we, constantly are talking about all of the things, both administratively and scientifically, that everybody owns a piece of. And so therefore, God forbid, something happens, they can just keep going on.
Which brings up, some very smart people do not play nice in the sandbox. So when you're going to, have group thought, are there any markers of people that you go, maybe not?
Yeah, and I think, you definitely have to be, we've all had experiences, and I think one of the greatest things, again, in an institution our size, is we can be, very selective in who we invite to the sandbox. And so we don't have people thrust upon us. We don't have somebody, saying, being somewhat pushed into our sandbox. And so I think we can be very selective on who we invite, and we make sure that everybody, who's in the sandbox agrees. Let's invite that kid into the sandbox. So I think there's a way to try to avoid the bully of coming into the sandbox.
Can I ask a question? The other thing Boone was big on was communication. And is there communication, in this field? There's a number of, eye programs across the country. Do y'all talk to each other? Do you share knowledge? Are you working?
Do you have a chat room?
Do they know about the sibling study and the stem cells? And is that shared knowledge, or does that take a while in the marketplace to happen?
Yeah, I think.
Or is it proprietary?
Yeah. Well, there is a certain level of, obviously, one of the, we've imposed a certain level, and again, taking from Boone, a certain business acumen. We are applying some business metrics onto how we do business. I think you have to. And so, yes, there's a component that's proprietary, and we want to develop that intellectual property. But there's also, many times, even though we may talk about it in public, there's this interesting phenomenon in medicine that many times, if people don't think of the idea, they dismiss it. And that's true across the history of medicine, right? And even some of the work we've done already, we did some intriguing work on novel ways to measure people's vision, for example. Using, those of you all have come and seen me, you've noticed there's this new way we measure your vision called the contrast sensitivity metric. Try to measure. We were working on that for almost 7-8 years. We published it. I would go out, talk about it, dismissed. Oh, it's meaningless. Suddenly, within the last 2 or 3 years, it's being incorporated into clinical trials. All the companies are picking it up. Harvard now has decided that it's the greatest thing since sliced bread. So
it must be true.
It must be true. So there is, I do think that communication is both part of the speaker communicating it, but it's also how receptive the community is. And sometimes that's a little bit more challenging. There's a lot of show me, show me, show me, show me over and over again. And then finally, when you get enough evidence, then they finally accept it.
So are you a good listener?
We're definitely, as I was
I'm talking about you personally.
As I was just telling one of my patients today, medicine, the older I get, I find it to be the most humbling experience. And I think part of being a good listener is being humble.
Well, Jay's humble. He must be a good
Yeah, I like your reference to Harvard. I went to Texas Tech, a 4-year school. Harvard's a 2-year school in my mind.
So, and that brings, you know, I tell people all the time, you know, Dallas, Texas is one of the greatest places to get sick in. You don't want to get sick, but if you have to be sick, Dallas, Texas, just, and so, you know, we were talking about Boone's impact and some of the I mean, my favorite Boone story was one of my favorite, there's many, but when he dedicated the Boone Pickens hospice care at Presbyterian, and he got up there and he goes, "I'm doing this, but I'm going to die a Methodist."
Exactly, because it's Presbyterian based, absolutely.
So, you know, so how, when you think about, you know, you've talked about writing a book, and, you know, I think you should, but what would be in it about your relationship with Boone? See, you can use this as a sounding board.
You know what? That's a great story because he did his book in the late '80s called Boone. He redid it later on to be the luckiest guy in the world. In many ways, I think I was the luckiest guy in the world because the things he allowed me to get exposed to, you know, from a political, philanthropic, from a media standpoint, you know, you can't replicate. And some of the stories, you know, that I could tell of all these different people, it's amazing. But it's his leadership style that I think I've benefited from the most. His ability to make quick decisions. Is he going to provide funding for the chair or not? It's just ability to be an effective communicator. You know, one of the things my job was to write speeches for him, which is great. I go write a speech and he'd never give it because he was such a great storyteller, right? And storytelling to make a point. You saw that. You had him.
Yeah, and we actually have a quick picture. This is us at his ranch back in I know exactly the date because this was 2016. And the reason why I remember that, and I remember exactly when it was the fall of 2016 because that evening we were there for the weekend. The evening we were there was the evening of the Trump-Hillary debate. And he made sure that we went into his theater and watched the debate. But as Jay was saying, one of the greatest things about, and this is a good example, he by far was the greatest storyteller that I've ever been exposed to. He could enchant a room for hours and just story after story of all of these experiences. And it was just wonderful. And you know, he just brought in everybody to the story, and it was just an enjoyable, entertaining event to be exposed to storytelling by Boone Pickens. It was just a wonderful, it's one of my fondest memories of our time at the ranch.
So we all know about Booneisms, and we know, most of us here know what your favorite was because you put it on the mug for his funeral. But other than that,
Which one did I put on there? Because my favorite one, I don't know if it's appropriate.
Okay, what is your favorite one? The monkey one, no.
So he used this at a media awards. It was the dishonorable media or whatever, and he had to present an award to Bill Moyers at the time. And Bill Moyers had made I know his history in Dallas, but he made a series of, what Boone perceived as media mistakes. And when he presented the award, he said, "I've always thought the higher the monkey climbs the tree, the more people can see its ass." And Bill Moyers, you climbed pretty high up that tree.
Okay.
You talked about the last thing. You talked about Boone as a storyteller. One of the biggest regrets I made was we did a lot of oral histories with Boone. His career, his philanthropy. The one we didn't do was Boone as a storyteller. And we just opened up a museum dedicated to Boone in Stillwater. It's got all those oral histories talking about why he gave to these different things. I should have done one on the great stories.
Absolutely.
So the time thing says that I'm supposed to open this up to questions, and so you guys better have some meeting ones. And can we kind of do away with that light?
Yes, we can turn the light off then so we can see people.
It's annoying my eyes.
It is annoying the eyes. Yes.
Monica.
Well,
Monica.
who could this possibly be? Yes. So we have plants in here.
I'm not a plant. I'm curious of all the grants and gifts that he made outside of the ones to Oklahoma State, because obviously those were personally, he was very emotionally attached to those. Was there one or two grants that he was most proud of, or he felt made the greatest impact during his lifetime?
Boy, I'm not going to answer that because 4 of them are in this room today, so I'm not going to rank one over the other.
You did learn something from Boone.
Yeah.
Actually, he would have answered it. Maybe.
Yeah.
No,
I don't know. That's a great one because so many of them were personal. This was, obviously personal because it had AMD. The Baylor gift was personal because, so much of his care, he got it at Baylor. The Center for Brain Health one was important because he wanted to be, mentally fit, as long as he possibly could. The School of Nursing one was incredible because he wanted, quality health care going forward into the future. So it'd be really hard for me to really to rank them. I mean, it would be.
Smart boy.
Yeah.
So, again, could we?
So Jay, I could probably help you. So this is Stephanie Brigger from Scottish Rite Hospital. And Mr. Pickens was such a significant and remarkable man that made such an impact for our children. And he got introduced to the hospital through an experience of one of his children, his grandchildren, and was so impressed. And when he was turning 75, Sally, his longtime assistant, called me and said, "Oh, we don't know what people are asking what to do, what to give to Mr. Pickens." And we said, "We don't know, but could they give gifts to the hospital?" And we're like, "Yeah, that would work. That would work." And so for his 75th birthday, the gifts came in and it was over $100,000. And from that gift, it is now at $3.2 million and is impacting education. He loved our medical education and research and what have you. And then he actually gave us the biggest singular monetary gift for $8 million for the conference center at Scottish Rite Hospital because he believed in that collaboration. And that was really key to him, that we were allowing the community to come in and that we were working with other entities, which was of huge value to him. So we are indebted to him. He was an incredible man and will never be forgotten.
Well, I also
Stephanie, thank you for that. And $100,000 for your first MRI machine.
That too.
Not that I'm keeping count.
That too. That was the first gift.
I call Dallas the Give Back Nation. I don't know of another. I mean, you deal with a lot of different cities, but I look at the quiet, steady giving that the people of Dallas who are so thankful for their success that it is amazing. I've talked with people from other cities and they're kind of like, and then there are people, I call, somebody once, a lot of people say, when are you going to write a book? And I've always thought about writing about the BBs, the been broke befores. And, the people like Boone who been broke, rose up, did it again. In any other town, they would be outcasts. But in here, we kind of celebrate those who don't make it the first time but come back. But to me, I see some people out there that I know are very, very generous in giving, and I'm sure that.
And I'll just say one thing, and I think Boone is a perfect example of this. The one thing over the last 15 years that I've really appreciated about Dallas is when you say generosity, it's not just money. It's time, it's experience, it's guidance. When you look at the fact that I got to know Boone, right? I mean, I spent time with him. We met with him, and so he was generous for someone as busy as he was. It's generosity not just of money, but of time, of character, of sharing, of friendship.
Did he ever hold your feet to the fire on things?
I think he would ask questions, some really probing questions. It was clear that he was, he was in many ways a genius, and so when he asked a question, you always got a little nervous because he always had very insightful questions to ask, and you could tell that he was judging you and how you made the answers. So there was ongoing pop quizzes all the time, but always in his Boone mannerisms. So you had to be a little bit, on your guard because he would, with a little nice, down south kind of homely way, he would ask us suddenly a question and you'd have to make sure you had a good answer for him. So it was interesting.
There were plenty of times I had the wrong answer.
Scott has a question. Again, we have plants here.
Yes.
Yes.
Not a real plant, but Karl, thank you for ION and just what all you're doing. And I know how much it meant to Boone. And just the stories, I loved seeing his ranch, because he was, like you said, he was so generous in so many ways, not with his money, with his time, with his ranch to invite people. We'll never forget the experiences that we had. One of my favorite Boone stories was he wanted to know how young his brain was. And so he challenged us. I don't want to just know what I score on something. I want to know how young my brain is because I feel like I'm as sharp as this whippersnapper here. And so he challenged us, and really the Brain Health Project, which is now the largest study in the world to look that people can improve their brain regardless of where they start. And we're showing that people 65, 75, 80 can actually have the structure of that age, but their function is younger. And it's really the inspiration of Boone. Can we have neural markers of what your brain is like, hemodynamic response? And he changed us with his generosity at a time that was so pivotal for us. When we walk in the Boone Pickens room, everyone is inspired. Ian Robertson from Ireland. So my question to you is how do we continue with this Boone legacy to really kind of challenge the world to be healthy, better, brain fit? How do we do that? And to just make Boone feel inside us to challenge us forward.
Yeah, Dr. Csaky, how are you going to do that?
Well, I think events like the one we're having right now. I think one of the things that, I was talking to Monica about this, this is such a great idea. I think honoring, Boone the man, but also Boone, what would he want today? What would he tell us today? What would he be wanting from all of us today? What would he want of me and of you? That kind of, that sense that, he demands a lot. He wants progress. He wants that constant movement forward. And he wants to see it happen. I think these kinds of events and just continuing to keep him alive, to me is a wonderful place to start. Because I think, that's how we can continue our drive and dedication for improvement. So I think keeping him
What would
alive.
Boone do?
What would Boone do? What would Boone say? What would Boone look at me and say, why aren't you doing this? That's the kind of spirit that I think.
So you hit me up on my favorite Booneism. Sandy, tell him your favorite Booneism.
I'd like to see.
Because it also applies
I'd
to
like to see
this.
Sandy, but unfortunately
Yes,
Yeah.
so my favorite is when you're tending your elephants, don't get distracted chasing rabbits. And we teach it in every one of our brain training classes because people are distracted by their rabbits and they lose their brain power. But if you know what your elephants are every day, you will make your brain more charged. And Boone loved that. He would laugh. We got to celebrate Boone's birthday up until his last one. Thank you for that. That is a celebration that means so much. And Karl, I agree. Let's continue to celebrate Boone and what he means to us.
One last question, and I think it's Scott.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Scott, up here.
This is just a quick Great Boone story. 20 years ago, Dr. Chapman and I were going into a meeting, and it was a big meeting, and it was a big ask. And Jay had made it clear that we would only have 10 minutes. So Sandy and I were just working on every word. I would say this, she would say that. I mean, so we would get our full point across. And my husband, Jim Francis, saw me just worrying about this and working on it. And he said, Debbie, what are you doing? Stop it. You know Boone. He's going to control this conversation. You are not. And I thought, you're right. He said, just go in there, say hello, and then answer his questions and be honest. So we did, and we went in and we had this meeting, and the president of the university was with us. And Boone looks down over his notes that Jay and Marty had put out, and he saw about this research, and he saw this Dr. Chapman. And even though we'd all introduced ourselves, midway in the discussion, Boone says, well, this sounds really interesting, but I want to meet this Dr. Chapman. And I said, well, Boone, this is Dr. Chapman. He was expecting a man. And he looked down, he went, well, I'll be damned. So that's my story.
And clearly he turned around and saw a blue board behind him. So.
First of all, I thought you both did a great job. And I remember being at the ranch, and I remember, Boone was so, for Pete's sake, Jay, how many years have we known each other? And it was all because of Boone. That's how I met you. And he just was one of the neatest people I ever met. And was so kind to me and did so many things. But I sat and listened to everything that you, for that matter, all three of you said tonight. So I just wonder what the takeaway is. You decided to have this event tonight on behalf of the Retina Foundation and on behalf of Boone, a dear friend to just about everybody in this room. We all have stories about Boone. But I just wondered what you'd like the takeaway to be. The very fact that you put this together tonight, and we all know what Boone has done for so many people and so many institutions over the years. How about you? What do you look upon, not just as his legacy, but what are you proudest of in your fondest memory of Boone? As you leave here, as we all leave here tonight, what's the one thing or the two things that you would like us to remember most about who Boone was and what he meant to both of you personally that we might share with the population out there, with our communities? What comes to mind?
Yeah, Dr. Csaky.
Yeah, Jay.
Scott, thank you for saying that. Those are all great questions. And I do think in many ways we've covered them. One, thank you to the Retina Foundation, Amy, for putting the spotlight on Boone and his involvement. So that's great. Hopefully some of his giving will inspire others to give. The other thing would be, I kind of think what, Sandy's Booneism goes to the whole point. We know what we want to accomplish with the Retina Foundation and macular degeneration, the achievements we can make there. So let's keep our focus on that. My other takeaway from Boone is, and I'm going to get there at some point, life in the fourth quarter, how he lived his life in the fourth quarter. He launched this ambitious energy plan in 2008 when he was 80 years old. How we traveled across the country and his ability to communicate that message and ultimately make a difference was inspiring. His last birthday party that I think Sandy referenced was in this very room at 90 years old. He was still active and wanted to make a difference. So if we could take that away from that, to me, that would be pretty good, pretty cool.
Well, let me go, and then Dr. Csaky can, because mine is less important but pertinent today. Boone and I were often diametrically opposite when it came to politics, but we could have civil discourse on it. And I truly wish we could go back to those days when you could just talk and not take it personally and think about it. That's my takeaway from Boone.
Well, first of all, I want to thank both Jay and Cheryl for being here and for spending their time as well as for you all to come here tonight. Because I do think that, when I reflect to your point to, what to think about, and I do think that, there is this Boone spirit, right, that we've talked about all night that I think is in all of us in some ways, right? I think there's always, in every one of this person in this room, there's a little Boone spirit in all of us, right? And I think it's important to reflect on that because he was such a transformative figure. But I think we have the potential, and everyone in this room, to add a little bit of that transformative spirit that Boone was able to do. And so that's, I think, the spirit that I would like to leave everybody, to think about where in each and every one of us is a little bit of Boone and what we're able to accomplish and do with what we have. And that's what I would like to leave.
My last duty is, it says that at 6:52, Paul ends the session.
Well, let's do it again, right now.
Okay.
Well, I'd like to thank you all for the stories and the stories that you all shared with us as well. The accomplishments and the inspiration that you've shared. T. Boone Pickens' impact on healthcare in North Texas will carry far into the future. And thank you all for sharing your evening with us. Thank you for supporting the research that provides our patients with hope backed by science. And we hope you'll join us May 8th at the Meyerson. We're going to have our luncheon there again, and it's going to be chaired by Jay Rosser and Dan Hunt. So he's you're right, I'm corrected, co-chair. And with honorary chairs, Leanne and Alan White. So we look forward to seeing you next year at the Meyerson. Thank you all for coming.